By the time the wedding coordinator told me the ceremony was about to start, the entire section of seats reserved for my family was still empty. Not one person was sitting there. Not my mother, not my father, not my older brother Ryan, not my Aunt Susan, not even my grandmother, whose name was printed on the little white card beside the aisle. I kept looking at those seats like they might suddenly fill themselves. They didn't. The string quartet started playing. My bridesmaids were already lining up. My fiancé, Ethan, was waiting at the other end of the aisle. And I was standing in the bridal suite, staring at my phone, trying to convince myself there had to be some explanation that didn't hurt as much as the obvious one. I had 11 missed calls from the venue. None from my family. I called my mother. She didn't answer. I called Ryan. Straight to voicemail. I called my dad. Nothing. I checked the family group chat. There were no messages. Just silence. My wedding day had been planned for more than a year. My mother had helped choose the flowers. My father had complained about the price of the catering. Ryan had joked for months that he was going to embarrass me during the reception. My grandmother had spent weeks talking about the dress she was going to wear. And now, 20 minutes before I walked down the aisle, every seat reserved for them was empty. I remember looking at the seating chart one more time. Table 6 at the reception. 4 seats at the ceremony. All of them had names. All of them were empty. The wedding coordinator came into the room. "Are you ready?" I looked at her. "My family isn't here." She hesitated. "I know. Did anyone call?" "No." "Are they stuck somewhere?" "I haven't heard anything." I swallowed. What am I supposed to do? She gave me the kind of sympathetic smile people give when they don't know what else to say. "You can wait." I looked at the clock. Then I looked at the door, and something inside me finally broke. "I'm not waiting." I walked down that aisle. I married Ethan. I smiled for photographs. I kissed him. I danced. I thanked people. I cut the cake. I laughed when I was supposed to laugh. And every few minutes, without meaning to, I looked toward the entrance. I kept expecting my mother to burst through the doors. Or Ryan to call. Or my father to text me some ridiculous explanation about traffic. Nothing happened. It wasn't until almost 2 hours after the ceremony that my phone finally rang. "Mom." I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. "Mom, where are you?" There was a pause. Then she laughed. "Oh my God, was that today?" I honestly thought I had misheard her. "What?" "Your wedding." I could hear background noise behind her. Music. People talking. Someone laughing. I stepped away from the reception. "Yes, Mom, my wedding was today." "Oh, honey." She sounded almost embarrassed. I completely lost track of the date. I closed my eyes. "You lost track of my wedding date?" I know. It sounds terrible." "It doesn't just sound terrible." She sighed. Ryan's girlfriend surprised him with a weekend trip. She planned everything last minute. We were all together, and honestly, we didn't want to ruin it for him. I stared at the wall. "So, you chose Ryan's trip over my wedding?" "That isn't what happened." "That's exactly what happened. Your brother needed us." "I needed you." She went quiet. Then she said something that I still can't forget. "You had Ethan." I couldn't speak. She continued. "You weren't alone." I laughed once. It wasn't because anything was funny. "You know what, Mom? You're right." She started saying my name. I hung up. I stood there for almost a minute with my phone in my hand. Then Ethan found me. He didn't ask what happened. He already knew. He just put his arms around me. "Don't let them take tonight from you." I leaned against him. "I don't understand how people can do this." "You don't have to understand it tonight." So I didn't. I went back inside. I danced with my husband. I smiled for our friends. I let myself enjoy the one thing my family couldn't take away from me. By midnight, almost everyone had left. Ethan and I were gathering our things when I noticed something on one of the empty chairs. A small, cream-colored envelope. It hadn't been there earlier. I was certain of that. I walked over. There was no stamp, no address. Just one name written across the front. Grandma. He froze. My grandmother had been in a nursing home for almost 2 years. She had mobility problems and needed round-the-clock care. According to my mother, she hadn't been feeling well enough to attend the wedding. That was what Mom had told me 3 weeks earlier. She'll be there in spirit. I had believed her. Now I was holding an envelope addressed in my grandmother's handwriting. I looked around. The reception hall was almost empty. "Ethan?" He came over. "What is it?" "I don't know." I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. There were only 2 paragraphs. The first said, "If they aren't here today, don't chase them." The second said, "They already made their choice, now you need to make yours." I read it twice. Then I noticed the handwriting. It looked like my grandmother's. Not similar. Hirsch. I sat down. Ethan crouched beside me. "Are you okay?" "My grandmother wrote this." "When?" "I don't know." "Can you call her?" I looked at the clock. It was after midnight. "She'll be asleep." I folded the note. "We'll call her tomorrow." I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, Ethan was still asleep when I opened Facebook. I wasn't planning to post anything. I had hundreds of photographs from the wedding, but suddenly I didn't feel like sharing any of them. Then I remembered the envelope, and something else. A photograph. It had been taken during the ceremony by one of the photographers. I hadn't noticed it at first because I'd been looking at Ethan. But when the photographer sent me the preview gallery that morning, I saw it. I was standing at the altar. Ethan was beside me. Our friends were sitting behind us, and in the very back of the room, near the entrance, was my grandmother. She was sitting in a wheelchair, wearing the blue dress she'd told me she wanted to wear. Looking directly at me, I stared at the photograph. My first thought was that it had to be an editing mistake. My second thought was that it couldn't be. The photographer's watermark was still across the image. I zoomed in. It was definitely her. I had no idea how she had gotten there. According to my mother, she had been at the nursing home. According to the nursing home's rules, she couldn't leave without an authorized family member. I didn't post the photograph immediately. I called the nursing home. A nurse answered. I asked if my grandmother had left the facility the previous day. The nurse put me on hold. When she came back, she sounded confused. "No, ma'am." "Are you sure?" "Yes. She was here all day." "All day?" "Yes." I stared at the photograph. "That doesn't make sense." "Is everything okay?" "Yeah." I hung up. Then I posted the picture. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't mention my family. I didn't explain where the photograph came from. I simply wrote, "Some people couldn't make it. Others made sure they were there." Then I hit post. I expected a few likes. Instead, my phone started vibrating almost immediately. First, my aunt. Then Ryan. Then my father. Then my mother. I hadn't even had time to open the comments. My mother called. I answered. "Delete it." "Oh, hello." No explanation. Just that. "What?" "Delete the photo." "Why?" "Just delete it." "Mom, that's Grandma." "I know who it is." "Then why are you freaking out?" "Because that picture shouldn't exist." My stomach tightened. What does that mean? "Take it down." "Tell me why." "Please." I had never heard my mother sound like that. Not angry. Not annoyed. Terrified. "Mom, you told me Grandma was at the nursing home." "She was." "Then how is she in my wedding photo?" Silence. "Mom?" "I don't know." "You don't know?" "Just delete the picture." I hung up. Ryan called immediately. I answered. "Did you take that photo down?" "No." "You need to." "Why?" "Because it's going to cause problems." "What problems?" "Just trust me." I laughed. "Trust you?" "I'm serious." "You skipped my wedding." "That wasn't my decision." "You were on a weekend trip with your girlfriend." "I know. And now you're calling me about a photograph of Grandma?" "Please, just delete it." "Why?" He didn't answer. "Ryan?" "Nothing." Then he said quietly, "Where did you get that picture?" I looked at the photograph on my screen. "The photographer." "That's impossible." He hung up. I stared at the phone. Then I called the photographer. She answered after 2 rings. "Hey, how are you feeling after the big day?" "Did you take this photo?" "Which one?" I sent it to her. There was a long pause.
Yes.
When? During the ceremony. Are you sure? Of course. Did you edit it?
No.
Was my grandmother actually there? Another pause. I assumed so. You assumed?
I saw her.
You saw her? Yes. I remember because one of your guests asked me to move around her wheelchair. My heart started pounding. Did you speak to her?
No.
Did anyone bring her in? I don't know. I thanked her and ended the call. I went back to the nursing home. This time, Ethan came with me. My grandmother was sitting near a window when we arrived. She smiled when she saw my dress. You got married? I laughed. Yesterday? I know. I sat beside her. Grandma, I need to ask you something. She looked at me. Did you come to my wedding? Her smile disappeared.
No.
I showed her the photograph. She stared at it. For several seconds, she didn't say anything. Then she looked at me. Where did you get this? The photographer. She took the phone from my hand. Her fingers began shaking. That isn't possible.
Why?
Because I never left this room yesterday. I swallowed. Then who was there? She looked at the picture again. That dress. What about it? I haven't worn that dress in years.
Why?
Because your mother took it. I frowned.
My mom? Yes.
When? After your grandfather died. I looked at the photograph. Then I remembered the envelope. Grandma, did you leave this for me? I showed her the note. She stared at it. Then her expression changed.
No.
You didn't write this?
No.
But that's your handwriting. She looked at me. Someone copied it. Who? I don't know. She pushed the phone back toward me. Then she said something that made my skin crawl. I've been trying to tell your mother for months that someone has been going through my things.
I stared at her.
What things? My old photographs.
Why?
I don't know. Did Mom know?
Yes. Did Ryan?
She nodded. What did they say? They told me I was confused. My grandmother looked away. Maybe they were right.
No.
She looked at me. You should listen carefully now. I leaned closer. Your mother was afraid of something long before your wedding. What? She never told me what it was. Then how do you know? Because she asked me one question. What question? She asked if I still had the envelope.
I felt cold.
What envelope? The one I gave you when you were 16. I frowned. I don't remember. You weren't supposed to.
I stared at her.
Then she looked at the wedding photograph again. Where did you get the envelope? I told her. Her face went pale. I never sent that. I know.
No.
She shook her head. You don't understand. What? That envelope was supposed to stay hidden. Where? She looked toward the hallway, then back at me. Inside the back of my old sewing cabinet. I remembered something. The envelope I'd found the night before had been too thick for a single sheet of paper. I hadn't thought much about it. I pulled it from my purse. My grandmother noticed immediately. Turn it over.
I did.
There was a seam along the inside. She pointed. Open that. I carefully ran my fingernail along the edge. The paper separated. Something small slid out. A black USB drive.
I stared at it.
My grandmother whispered, I don't know what's on that. Do you know who put it there?
No.
Then why were you scared? She looked at me. Because your mother told me never to let you see it. I felt like the room had tilted. My mother?
Yes. Why?
I don't know. Grandma, what happened? She reached for my hand. Your family has been telling you one story for a very long time. What story? That Ryan was always the one who needed protecting. I felt tears rise in my eyes. What's wrong with Ryan? Nothing. Then what's wrong with me? She looked at me for a long time. You asked too many questions. I almost laughed. Apparently. She squeezed my hand. That's why they were afraid you'd notice. Notice what? She didn't answer. She only looked at the USB drive. I thanked her and left. Ethan was waiting in the car. I showed him the drive.
He stared at it.
Do you want to know what's on it?
No.
He looked at me.
Yes.
I laughed nervously. I'm terrified.
Me too.
We went home. I closed the blinds, locked the doors. Then I opened my laptop. The USB contained only one folder. The folder was named with my wedding date. Inside was one video file. The file had been created the night before my wedding. I looked at Ethan. This is impossible. He pulled his chair closer. Play it. I clicked. The screen went black. Then the video appeared. It was filmed inside a room I recognized immediately. My parents' living room. My mother was sitting on the couch. My father was beside her. Ryan was standing near the fireplace. There were papers spread across the coffee table. My mother looked exhausted. My father looked angry. Ryan looked nervous. Then my mother spoke. The audio was clear. I don't care what she thinks anymore. Ryan looked at her. You said she wasn't supposed to know. My father slammed his hand on the table. She won't know if everyone sticks to the story. My heart started pounding. I reached for Ethan's hand. On the screen, Ryan looked toward the camera. Then my mother said something that made me stop breathing. She said my name. And in that instant, I understood that my family hadn't skipped my wedding because they forgot it. They had been afraid of what I might discover if they showed up. I stared at the laptop screen, barely breathing. Ethan's hand was still wrapped around mine. On the video, my mother was sitting at the edge of the couch with a folder open in front of her. My father was standing behind her, his arms crossed. Ryan was pacing near the fireplace. My mother looked exhausted. I don't care what she thinks anymore, she said. Ryan stopped pacing. You said she wasn't supposed to know. My father leaned forward. She won't know if everyone sticks to the story. I paused the video. For several seconds, neither Ethan nor I spoke. Then, I looked at him. What story? I don't know. I pressed play again. My mother's voice came through the speakers. She believes Grandma left everything to her because that's what Grandma told her when she was younger. My stomach dropped. My father immediately said, Lower your voice. Ryan looked toward the hallway. She doesn't have the documents, does she? No, my father said. She doesn't even know where to look. I paused the video again. Documents, I whispered.
Ethan nodded.
Keep going. I pressed play. Ryan sat down. What happens when she gets married? My mother looked at him. That's why we're doing this now. Ryan rubbed his face. Ethan is going to ask questions. He already has, my father said. I looked at Ethan. He raised his eyebrows. I've asked them about the house once, he said quietly. That's it? I turned back to the screen. My mother continued. She'll start asking about the trust. She'll want to know why the statements don't match what Grandma told her. And once she finds out Ryan has been using the account, Ryan interrupted. I paid it back. My father turned toward him. You've been saying that for 3 years. I was going to. My mother's voice became sharper. You were supposed to have paid it back before she got married. Ryan looked down. I didn't have it. I felt something cold move through my chest. I paused the video again. Ryan was taking money? Ethan didn't answer immediately. I think we need to watch the whole thing. He was right. I pressed play. My father walked toward the window. She doesn't need to know every detail. My mother shook her head. She will, eventually. Not if she signs the new paperwork. Ryan looked up. What paperwork? The amendment. I stared at the screen. What amendment? My mother opened the folder. The property agreement. Your father and I already signed ours.
Ryan stood.
What about her? She'll sign when she believes it's just an update.
I felt sick.
Ethan leaned closer to the screen.
Wait.
He pointed. There was a document on the coffee table. The top page was facing the camera at an angle. I couldn't read everything, but I could see my name. And beneath it was the name of my grandfather. I had spent most of my life believing my grandfather had left my grandmother the family property, and that, eventually, it would be divided between the grandchildren. My grandmother had told me that when I was 16. She had said, Your grandfather wanted you girls to have something that belonged to the family. At the time, I thought she meant something sentimental. I never imagined she meant money. I kept watching. My father said, The account was never supposed to be touched. Ryan looked at him. I know. You used it anyway. I needed help. You needed $100,000? Ryan's face changed.
He froze.
$100,000. My mother spoke quietly. It wasn't all at once. My father turned around. That doesn't make it better. Ryan stood there with his hands in his pockets. I thought I'd fix it before she knew. And when were you planning to do that? My father asked. Ryan didn't answer. My mother closed the folder. This is exactly why we can't let her see these records. I paused the video. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. Ethan followed. I need air. You're inside. I know. I opened the back door anyway. The morning air was cold against my face. For years, my family had made me feel like I was the irresponsible one. Ryan was always the one who needed help. Ryan needed money for college. Ryan needed help buying his first car. Ryan needed help with his business. Ryan needed help after his breakup. Ryan needed help when his business failed. And every time I asked why my parents couldn't help me with something, they said the same thing. You're doing fine. I was doing fine because I had learned not to ask. But apparently, while I was doing fine, they had been using something that was partly mine. Ethan came outside. Do you want to stop? I shook my head. No. Are you sure? I need to know. We went back inside. I pressed play. The video continued. My mother was crying now. I never wanted it to get this far. My father said, Then you should have stopped him.
I tried.
Ryan looked at her. You didn't try hard enough.
She stared at him.
You think I don't know what I've done? Ryan looked away. My father picked up the folder. She gets married tomorrow. If she signs the papers, the situation becomes manageable. What papers? I whispered. Ethan looked at me. Probably the amendment. My mother's voice cracked. And if she doesn't? My father said, then we tell her. Ryan immediately shook his head.
No.
My father looked at him. We don't have a choice. Ryan stepped closer. She'll hate me. I stared at the screen. My brother looked genuinely afraid. Not of losing money. Of losing me. That hurt almost as much. Then my mother said something that changed everything. She already thinks we chose you over her. Ryan looked down. My father said quietly, Because we did. I stopped the video. I couldn't watch anymore. I sat there staring at the laptop. Ethan pulled up a chair beside me. Do you want me to call a lawyer?
He nodded. Yes.
We didn't call my family. We called an attorney recommended by a friend of Ethan's. I didn't tell him everything over the phone. I simply said, I had discovered documents suggesting that family assets had been managed without my knowledge, and that I needed advice before contacting anyone. He told us to preserve everything. The USB, the envelope, the note,
the photograph.
Every text message, every Facebook notification, everything. He also told us not to confront my parents until we understood what we were dealing with. That was harder than it sounds. I wanted to call my mother immediately. Instead, I spent the next several hours going through boxes in my closet. I found old birthday cards, school records, photographs, and finally, a small folder my grandmother had given me when I turned 18. I opened it. Inside was a copy of my grandfather's will. I had never really read it. I had assumed it was mostly about my grandmother. But there it was. A family investment account, a property, and instructions that certain assets were to be held for his grandchildren. My name was there.
That was Ryan's.
I looked at Ethan. Why didn't I know about this? Maybe your grandmother thought you did. She never explained the details. I turned the page. There was an account number, then another document, a statement. The last balance I could see was from years earlier. It was much larger than I expected, and there was a handwritten note in my grandmother's handwriting. Ask questions before you sign anything.
I stared at it.
That was when I understood the note from the wedding. If they aren't here today, don't chase them. They already made their choice. Now you need to make yours. My grandmother hadn't been telling me to choose between my family and Ethan. She had been telling me to choose whether I was finally going to protect myself. I called her. She answered almost immediately. Did you find it?
Yes.
Her voice softened. The video?
Yes.
There was a long silence. Then I know some of it.
She sighed.
I was hoping you wouldn't have to. Grandma, why didn't you tell me? Because every time I tried, your mother told me you would be destroyed by the truth. She lied. I know. Why did you let them keep me in the dark? I didn't. I stopped. What? I spent years trying to protect what belonged to you. She explained that my grandfather had created the account because he wanted both of his grandchildren to have financial independence. After he died, my grandmother was responsible for overseeing certain parts of it. My father had eventually become involved because he was handling some of the property paperwork. That's when things started changing. Small withdrawals, loans to Ryan, expenses that were described as temporary. My grandmother confronted my father. He promised everything would be restored. It wasn't. So you recorded them?
Yes. How?
I knew nobody listened when I spoke. Her voice trembled. So I started keeping copies. She explained that she had stored documents, recordings, and photographs in places her family didn't know about. The envelope had been one of those hiding places. She hadn't physically placed it on the wedding chair. She had given instructions to someone she trusted at the venue to make sure it reached me if my family didn't show up. Who? I can't tell you that.
Why?
Because your mother has already accused that person of stealing. I didn't push. My grandmother continued. The photograph you posted was what frightened them.
Why?
Because your grandfather's blue dress is in that photograph. I frowned. What does the dress have to do with anything? Look carefully. I opened the photograph again. My grandmother was sitting in the back. She wasn't wearing the blue dress. The woman in the photograph was, but her face was partially turned away. I zoomed in. My heart stopped. That isn't Grandma.
No.
Who is it? I don't know. My grandmother's voice became quieter. But I know why your parents were scared. I stared at the image. The woman was sitting beside a man. The man was wearing a suit. I zoomed in. Ethan leaned over. That's your dad. I felt the room go silent. My father had been at my wedding. He hadn't come to congratulate me. He had been in the back of the room, watching. I remembered my mother saying they hadn't come. I remembered the empty chairs. I remembered the photograph. And suddenly the entire story changed. My family hadn't simply stayed home. At least some of them had been there. They had been watching me. My grandmother told me that the photograph mattered because it proved my father had lied about where he was that day. But there was more. The woman beside him, Grandma said, was Susan. My aunt.
I felt dizzy.
Why would they disguise her? They weren't disguising her. Then what were they doing? They were checking whether you had noticed them. I stared at Ethan. They wanted to know if I saw them.
Yes. Why?
Because they needed to know whether you had already found the documents. I suddenly understood why my father had panicked when I posted the picture. It wasn't simply that Grandma appeared to be at the wedding. It showed my father and aunt in the same room. And it proved their story about being away was false. That afternoon, my mother came to my house. She didn't knock twice. She stood there holding her purse with both hands. I opened the door. She looked older than she had the day before. Can I come in? I stepped aside. My father was in the car. Ryan was sitting in the passenger seat. My mother looked at Ethan. Can we talk privately? No, I said. She looked at me. I understand. We sat in the living room. My father and Ryan came inside. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then I placed the USB drive on the coffee table. My mother's face changed. I watched it. My father closed his eyes. Ryan looked at the floor. I said, "How much money?" My father said, "It's complicated." "How much?"
He sighed.
"About $87,000. I looked at Ryan. "How much did you take?" Ryan swallowed. 73. I couldn't believe it. "And the rest?" My father answered, "Legal expenses, taxes, repairs on the property." I looked at him. "Were those expenses mine too?"
No.
"Then why weren't I told?" My mother started crying. "Because we thought we could fix it." I shook my head. You didn't think you could fix it. You thought I wouldn't notice. Ryan finally looked at me. I was going to pay it back. You've been saying that for years. I know. You let them lie to me. I was scared. So was I. He looked down. I know. I turned to my mother. Why did you skip my wedding? She wiped her face. Because your father thought if we showed up, you'd ask questions. My father interrupted. That isn't exactly... Don't, I said. He stopped. My mother continued. You had started asking about the account. Then Ethan asked about the property. We panicked. So you decided to punish me? No. You made me believe my own mother forgot my wedding. I know. You let me walk down the aisle thinking nobody in my family cared. My mother started crying harder. I thought if you were angry, you'd stop asking questions. I stared at her. That makes no sense. I know. Ryan spoke quietly. It was my fault. I looked at him. What? I told Dad you were asking about the account. My chest tightened. You did? I thought you were going to expose me. You should have told me. I know. You should have apologized. I know. You should have stopped taking money. I know. For the first time, he looked directly at me. I was ashamed. That was the first honest thing he had said. My father reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. I have a plan. I almost laughed. Of course you do. He placed the folder on the table. I've already arranged repayment. I opened it. There were bank statements, a repayment schedule, a property valuation, a letter from an attorney. My father had started selling a second property. Ryan had signed an agreement to repay part of the amount. It wasn't enough to erase what happened, but it was a start. Then I saw another document, a copy of a letter from my grandmother's attorney. It stated that if the account was ever depleted without proper authorization, my grandmother intended to have the records independently reviewed. The letter was dated 6 months earlier. I looked at my mother. You knew about this? She nodded. That was why you were afraid of Grandma. No, my father said. We were afraid of what she would do if she stopped protecting us. That sentence stayed with me, because it was the closest thing to the truth any of them had given me. My grandmother had never been powerless. She had simply been waiting for me to be strong enough to use the information herself. The attorney we had spoken to reviewed everything. The family assets were not some massive fortune. There was no secret mansion or hidden millions. It was much more ordinary than that. A family property, an investment account, some proceeds from my grandfather's estate, enough money to matter, enough to change lives, and enough for years of lies to destroy a family. My grandmother had already taken steps to protect my share. She had requested independent account statements. She had placed restrictions on future withdrawals. She had made sure I had copies of the original documents. She hadn't performed some magical legal trick. She had simply prepared, because she knew, eventually, I would need the truth. A few weeks later, Ryan started making repayments. My father sold the property. My mother moved into a smaller place. Aunt Susan stopped contacting me, not because I had demanded it, because she knew she had no excuse. Ryan and I didn't speak for several months. Then, one afternoon, he showed up at my house. He stood on the porch, holding a cardboard box. I brought your stuff. I opened it. Inside were photographs, letters, some childhood things I'd forgotten existed. And at the bottom was my grandmother's blue dress. I looked at him. Why did you have this? He shook his head. I didn't. Then who did? I closed the box. Why? He looked away. She said Grandma didn't want you to see it. I understood then. The dress in the wedding photograph hadn't been a random detail. It had been a signal. My grandmother had wanted me to recognize something, not because the dress itself mattered, because it was proof that the family had been manipulating what I saw and what I believed. I visited Grandma the next day. She was sitting beside the same window. I showed her the photograph one more time. You knew I'd figure it out. She smiled. I hoped you would. Why didn't you just tell me everything? Because people don't always believe warnings. I smiled sadly. You could have tried. I did. She reached for my hand. I told you to ask questions. I looked down. And I finally did. She nodded. You chose your own life. I thought about my wedding, about those empty chairs, about my mother laughing on the phone, about the envelope, about the photograph. For a while, I had believed the worst thing my family had done was miss my wedding. It wasn't. The wedding was just the moment when all their lies became impossible to hide. My grandmother squeezed my hand. I wanted you to understand something. What? Family isn't the people who tell you what you want to hear. She paused. Family is supposed to be the people who don't need you to stay small so they can feel safe. I cried then, not because I had lost my family, because I finally understood that I had spent years trying to earn a place at a table where they had already decided I should sit quietly. Ethan never once told me what I should do. He never demanded that I cut anyone off. He never turned himself into the hero. He simply sat beside me through every meeting, every document, every ugly conversation. One night, months after the wedding, we were sitting on our couch. He looked at me.
You okay?
I thought about it. Not completely.
He nodded.
Me neither. I smiled. But, I'm better. He took my hand.
So am I.
My family didn't disappear from my life completely. That would have been too simple. My mother and I eventually started speaking again. Not like before. There were boundaries.
Healed ones.
No shared financial accounts. No signing anything without an attorney reviewing it. No secrets disguised as protection. Ryan continued paying back what he owed. We slowly rebuilt some kind of relationship, but it wasn't the old one. It couldn't be. Some things don't go back to the way they were. My father never apologized the way I wanted him to. He said he was protecting the family. Maybe he believed that. Maybe that's how people justify things they know are wrong. My grandmother lived long enough to see me settle into my marriage. She kept the wedding photograph on her nightstand, the one with the mysterious woman in her dress, the one that started everything. Sometimes I asked her if she regretted what happened. She always gave me the same answer.
Ew. Then she'd smile.
Because you finally asked the right questions. I still have the original envelope. I still have the note. I still have the USB drive, and I still have the photograph. I never deleted it. Not because I wanted to embarrass my family, not because I wanted revenge. I kept it because that photograph reminds me of the moment I stopped believing that keeping peace was more important than knowing the truth. My family skipped my wedding because they were afraid I would discover what they had done. They thought leaving those chairs empty would keep me from asking questions. Instead, those empty chairs were the first honest thing they had given me in years. Because sometimes the people who walk away from you at the moment you need them most aren't taking your future from you. They're finally making it possible for you to build one without their lies.